a.m., so we'll begin, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Smithfield Town Council, beginning with a prayer and pledge.
Lord, assisted by Holy Spirit of counsel, all those who are serving in positions of authority and responsibility.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Howe?
Ms. Al's contacted me this afternoon, she was ill.
Mr. McGee?
Yeah.
Mr. Gaspar? Mr. Zelinski? Mr. Flaherty?
Present. So the first item on our agenda is discussion by council vote or other action on request for permission to clean the historical cemetery for Eagle Scout project on J. Gerard. So you kind of need to step forward and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the project.
Yep. Hello, my name is Jake Gerard, and I'm with Group 1139 Slatersville. I am here to ask permission to clean the Union Village Historic Cemetery, lot NS31, as part of my Eagle project. I have printed a handful of copies of the site for your review, if you would like to look at these. I have met with Mr. Richard Whitesell of the Rhode Island Advisory Commission on Historical Cemeteries several weeks ago, and received his permission as well as the Advisories Commission to move forward with cleaning up the cemeteries. I got a packet of all of the information that I have to use and all of the rules that I have to follow while I'm cleaning it. And he suggested that I came here to get your permission as well, just in case. There are 3 historic lots located on the site, and I plan to concentrate on lot NS31, as I previously stated. Although I will also be erecting a few historical cemetery signs on all 3 sites as well as part of my project. My plan is to begin the project this fall by spraying to kill poison ivy located throughout the site. I will complete the project in the spring with a target completion date by the end of April 2014.
So this is a terrific project. Now, is your first name Jay?
Jake, yes.
Jake, I'm sorry, Jake. So Jake, what can you tell us a little bit about what cleaning it involves? I mean, what kind of circumstances are you addressing?
Yes. The cemetery is heavily overgrown. There are small saplings growing throughout the whole area around the burials, and there's also quite a bit of leaves on the ground and poison ivy, as I stated before. What we'll be doing is getting rid of the saplings that are in the way. We'll be leaving large trees, but we'll be clearing out any branches that have fallen or anything. We will clean up all the leaves and clear it out so that you can see it from the street. If you drive by there on Great Road, you can kind of see the fence leaning over. So I'll be doing some work to hopefully pick up that fence so it'll stand up straight and you'll be able to see it nice and clear from the street.
So I think I heard you say we. So is this other troop members?
Yes. Part of my the whole point of my Eagle project is to lead a group of boys in doing the project. So I will be getting help from the rest of Group 1139.
Terrific. Sounds like a great project. Does anybody have any questions for Jake?
Yeah. Jake, thank you for undertaking this project. It's all we need. I appreciate it personally. Question, you spoke with Rhode Island Historic Cemeteries,
Yes,
and you have a verbal or written okay to do it?
I have both.
Perfect. If you would just supply the town clerk with a copy of the written one.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve this. So if you want an official motion, Mr. President?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Jake Gerard to lead a team of fellow Boy Scouts to clean and sweep the cemetery Cemetery Union,
That would be
Unionville?
Union Village Historic Cemetery
Union Village.
lot NS 31.
Yes, that's my motion.
Motion by Mr. Zelinski, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McGee and Mr. Yazbak. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, the motion is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on a great project. And we look forward to hearing back from you in April.
Oh, yes,
Okay, terrific.
Before and after pictures, Jay?
of course.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion by council vote or other action on update on regulatory reform. Leslie Tato. Ms. Tato heads up the Office of Regulatory Reform in the Department of Administration. She also came and presented at our all boards meeting back in, I think it was in maybe March, talking about this initiative both at the state level and for North Smithfield. North Smithfield is one of about 5 pilot communities working on trying to improve our permitting process, hopefully with the goal of not only automating it, but also becoming consistent with other communities throughout the state so that we can, as a state, become a little bit more business friendly. What I had asked Leslie to focus on is really sort of give us an update on where the state initiative is in terms of reviewing all the regulations that can be streamlined, but also what things that this council needs to understand and what steps we ought to be thinking about taking and perhaps budgeting for in order to fulfill this. This is one of the goals that the council established back in January. It's on our 2-year work plan, and so this is an opportunity to check in with Leslie to see where things are at the state level and what things we need to be tuned to. So, Leslie, welcome.
Thank you very much. If I don't use the podium, is that okay? Because I do not have a remote
That's
with
fine.
my
We're going to be
presentation.
picking you up on the recording.
Let me just sleep. Excellent. So, as Mr. Flaherty said, my name is Leslie Tato, and I am the State Director of Regulatory Reform. I work in the Office of Management and Budget, specifically in the Regulatory Reform Office. I'm going to do a couple of slides just to give you all a broader background of the office and what we're trying to do. So our mission in the Office of Regulatory Reform is ultimately to make it easier to do business in our state. We have had some folks, we've talked to the business community over the last several years, done some surveys out in the business community. They said it's very difficult to navigate the regulatory environment at the state level and at the local level. So our office was created so that we could start to address some of those issues. We're really trying to create a clear, predictable, and reliable regulatory environment, trying to remove some of the economic barriers so that regulations aren't overly burdensome to small business, but we're still protecting the health and safety of our citizens and make sure that everyone can know how to function within those realms. Right now, we're in the middle, we just ended today, was the 3rd period review. We are reviewing every state regulation that is on the books. There are 1,642 state regulations that are regulated through 74 entities. So we are doing a very, very comprehensive review of those regulations. I brought copies of our Period 1 report. If you'd like to look at that, we'll be issuing Period 2. Period 3 will be issued. The report will be issued in about 3 or 4 months. Right now, we've looked at about 1,090 of those regulations. And we're looking at a regulatory environment that if you stack those regulations on top of one another, it's over 26,000 pages of regulations. Be about 10 copies of War and Peace stacked on top of one another. So that's ultimately what we're reviewing right now. And we're reviewing them for specific things. We want to know who has to comply with that regulation, how much does it cost them to comply. We want to know from an entity's perspective, how much does it cost them to enforce that regulation. What we're really trying to do is make sure that people not only understand if they have to conform with the regulation, but really how to navigate the system. And after doing this review for several months now, it is very difficult to do at best. So we're really looking at how do we streamline this and make it more user-friendly. So that's the ongoing regulation analysis that we're doing. We also have small business ombudsman service for people who are stuck in the regulatory environment right now. We can provide some assistance to ultimately get them unstuck. We don't ever guarantee that we're going to get a yes or no answer, but we guarantee that we can help people get an answer. And we have been given the authority to bring regulatory entities, agencies, and directors together so that they can have a conversation for people who are stuck in the system and can't seem to move one way or another. We want to get them moving, get those projects moving forward. 9 times out of 10, they have jobs associated with that. The governor is very adamant about doing everything that he can to encourage job creation within our state. The last initiative, what I'm really going to focus on here this evening, is statewide e-permitting. We have a system right now that is not electronic. If everything is done on a paper basis, so if we look at it from our customer's perspective, if they have to apply for a permit or they need to get their fire system, their suppression system approved, they have to literally drive those plans to someone's office. They have to look at those plans. If they need to change, they'll have to come back and get those. What we're trying to do is eliminate that back and forth, make a very clear, predictable, and reliable regulatory system so people understand when something's been approved and move to the next phase. So what we're trying to do is establish a very uniform statewide web-based system. We've looked at a tremendous amount of systems. We've looked at best practices from other states, done some extensive research in the state of Utah because they've been very kind of on the leading edge of some of these electronic permitting initiatives. And so our charge now from the General Assembly and the Governor's Office is to make sure that we work with the Building Commissioner's Office first and also work with the State Fire Marshal. We want to do everything that we can to get their systems up and online so that people understand, number one, how to navigate it, but it becomes more electronic. They can apply for a permit from their office, not have to drive back and forth. When I first started, we started out with 2 departments that didn't even have the ability to take in electronic drawings and files. That has since been remedied. So we've done some pretty substantial gap analysis and found some hardware and technology that we can start to close that gap a bit. But really going through this process when we're looking at building out a statewide system, what we don't want to do is leave the municipalities out of this. If we want a comprehensive statewide system, it needs to include those municipalities. Right now, there are currently 5 cities and towns that are already on an electronic permitting system. They're Providence, North Kingstown, Warren, East Providence has their own system. We have a couple of others that are getting ready to go up online. But our biggest fear is that everybody's going to go get a different system, and that if we go to a statewide system, we don't ultimately get to statewide because we will have certain municipalities who are already on other systems. Right now, what we're trying to do is identify some technology that will allow for interface with those systems. Or if they won't interface, we're trying to figure out how long they've signed lease agreements for, so that ultimately if they don't come on year 1, 2, or 3, that they'll be far enough in their lease agreement that they can see if they want to maintain the product that they're currently using or if they'd like to go to a statewide system. We would really like to see a comprehensive statewide system where a building commissioner from their city or town can talk back to the state building commissioner, state fire marshal. It will still provide some autonomy for the cities and towns. You will go into a website that will look and feel exactly like that city and town, but it will be a standardized process. We understand we can't get the entire process into the system. Everyone has different district overlays. They're going to have different historic districts. What we want to do is we feel that if we can normalize 80% of this process and standardize it, then it will make it easier for all of our customers statewide to use it. So we're looking for something that's, again, user-friendly, web-based, and really can track user activity. We've seen some software systems that are very good about as soon as it is approved and that permit moves to the next level, so it could be an inspection level, as soon as an inspector signs off on that, the customer gets an email that says you are now moving into the next phase of this process so they can track it throughout. We want it to be able to accept electronic signatures. That's always been a big challenge with some of these systems, so if we're going to go for it all, we want that in there. We want to track what internal and external users are doing. So if it's going internally and if there's a portion that the customer is not going to see, we want that system to be able to track that as well. And we want it to be able to create accounts with multiple security levels. We want it to be able to handle electronic drawings, photos, and plans, as well as process fees online. Now, I've had some conversations with other municipalities that say, but my fees are going to be different than another community's fees. We're not in the business of regulating fees. What we want to do is make the format the same. So if your community charges something than your neighboring community, that will be up to you to provide that data in there. We are not regulating that. We just, again, are looking at the process. Again, tracking internal and external processes and changes in user actions. If the user decides that they are going to change what they're doing in the middle of the process, they'll be able to feed that information back into the system, which will then let someone in your building department know that that's been changed. And the ability to implement custom workflows by permit types and groups. This is very important because we have so many different levels of permits, licensing, registrations. We want it to be able to handle those all seamlessly. We have to do this on a multi-tenant basis. This is going to be a very robust system. If we ultimately build it out so all communities can participate, it's got to be very robust and be able to handle thousands of interactions with that on a monthly basis. We also want it to be, to support all the technology of today, mobile applications. Some of the biggest thing that we've heard from inspectors in the field, fire marshal's office, is that they can be out, they'll see an issue, and instead of having to write that down and document it, they can actually take a photo, send that back to the office. Now we can keep a digital electronic record of everything that's happened with those inspections, so that if there's ever a reason that someone has that says that they disagree or they don't think something was done appropriately or it looked one way when they were there and looked a different way when they got back, photos cure all of that. So we want to be able to deploy some of that technology into the field. When I first started, we were working with a community where I wanted to staple myself to the order, pretty much. And we literally walked the process with it. And the process was going great until the gentleman went out to do an inspection on a Friday, was late, the homeowner wasn't there, stuck the file in his car, he went on vacation the next week, and that file sat in that truck for a week. If you have mobile technology, it will allow that not to happen. They can take photos, we can give them technology where they can actually print permits in their trucks. They're doing that in Jacksonville, Florida, and doing it very successfully. They're also doing it in a couple of other states out in the Midwest. So we feel that if we give them that capability, it speeds up the entire process and again, allows our customers to get the answers so that they can move forward with their projects. I've been working, I have to tell you, and I'm sorry that she's not here this evening, but Administrator Hamilton was one of the early adopters who said, come in, we want to figure out what we're doing. And actually what we did is we did process mapping with her staff there. I know that Bob Erickson is here and they've done a great job about mapping out what they've done in their planning department. We've worked with the building inspector here really to go through and start to document. These maps are critically important to the work that we're doing right now because what it's allowing us to do is to see the commonalities between communities. I've also worked with the city of Pawtucket, the town of North Kingstown. We've gotten data in from East Providence, so there are other communities that have participated in this process. This really allows us to look at the current state, how do we do it now, so that we can start looking at some continuous improvement methodologies that we can streamline this process. I tell everybody I speak to when I speak about this issue, I don't want to take a flawed process and apply technology on top of it because now we have flawed technology. We really want to do a current state map, figure out where everything is now, refine and improve that in process, and then apply the technology on top of that. Let me tell you about some next steps that we're doing at the statewide level. Right now, we're finalizing the request for proposal that will go out. We should have, that will probably go out within the next month or so, probably 4 to 8 weeks. We are doing this process mapping. We are continuing on the process mapping that I just showed you before so that we can get entire systems identified. And again, I'm looking for 80% standardization, so we're looking where it crosses over community lines and state lines. We want to streamline that process. One of the best, probably quick stories that I can tell you is we are working with the State Fire Marshal's Office. We did their process mapping, which is very visual. They had all of their management in the room. They started looking at it and they said, you know what, we can cut out these steps. They cut 5 steps out of the process, which ultimately eliminated about 4 days from a customer's perspective. We want to continue to have those conversations. Those are very meaningful to what we're doing. We will select a vendor. We're hoping to get a pretty good sampling. We know who some of the better ones are in the industry, and we're really hoping that they're going to participate in the request for proposal process. We will then beta test the system. We're looking to do that probably by the end of this year or early next year, January, February at the latest. We will initially deploy that technology in the State Building Commissioner's Office and the State Fire Marshal's Office. We will monitor, evaluate, see how that's going, and then we're going to be looking for some city and town participation. Now, the big question ultimately is how much is it going to cost us to participate? If I had my druthers, it would be 0. What I don't want to do is build out a system where we're going to charge our customers more to do this electronically. So we're really trying to take a comprehensive look at this and see how we structurally do this so that we make it easier for our customers to participate, but we also make it more affordable for them to participate. So we are going to be looking at that. We are writing that RFP with the thought that we are maybe going to be able to get 3 cities and towns to participate in the initial deployment, which would be a second phase after we get the State Building Commissioner and State Fire Marshal. These maps, this is where the process mapping that I showed you before becomes critically important because those cities and towns will ultimately be easier to adopt some technology like this and be willing to beta test the system. So that's kind of a lot of information very quickly. Anybody have any questions?
How will you be selecting the 3 communities for doing beta testing?
We want to see, first of all, if it's going to be financially feasible for us to do this when we do the RFP. What we've done is we've almost had them do a second, there'll be an addendum to that. So we'll reserve the right, if we have financially enough money to pay for a couple of cities and towns to come on, that's ultimately how it would be done. And early adopters are great. I don't want to make any promises, but we are looking for the communities that have worked with us early on because we're so far into the process. We've already done the identification of the current state. So it makes it much easier for those folks to adopt and go in.
Right?
Please.
Leslie, thank you again for coming on twice this year.
Sure.
The RFP request is going to be upgrading of the hardware, the software. How about training? What element of training is going to be involved here?
So we've asked them to include training in the request for proposal because because it runs the gambit throughout communities. And it runs the gambit actually at the state level. Some people are very technology savvy, some are not. So we've got to look at that so that we can get a baseline for that and figure out what that training package is going to look like. It will be critically important. I've talked to some other communities who have already deployed technology, states who have deployed technology. They said the training was the most critical element because you have to get the buy-in to say, we're going to move today from paper and go electronic. That can be very scary for people. That's a big change. So they said that the training, especially by 2 of the companies, we got excellent references on their training. We're hoping that those are some of the folks that are going to participate in the RFP. But training was a critical component into really successful deployment of the system. So it'll be a huge part of it. So it's also, we're asking them to address that. That along with, if their system goes down on a web-based system, what does the security look like? What are you going to do for disaster recovery? How quickly can we get back up and running if someone experiences an event where it's being posted? But because it's cloud-based, and a lot of people don't like cloud-based, but I think it's a really good opportunity for us to end up with a statewide solution.
So if you were looking for communities to be part of that, certainly some of the costs would be shared by your office or the state?
Right now it would be the state, and that's why we're asking for the RFP to see what those costs really are. We just don't know right now.
Okay.
I'm looking at other states. It's really hard to compare some states that have 3 and 4 times the population that we do with a state like ours. So we're just going to have to see what those look like when they come in, and then look at the budget and the allocation and see how far that money will go. I'm going to push it as far as it will go.
We also are fortunate that Mr. Ozovsky is in the audience this evening, and Gary's had a lot to do, I think, with this process as well,
He
from
sure
his
has.
role on the SBA committee. I don't know if Gary, if you had anything you wanted to add to this, as somebody who's been sort of in the trenches on it?
No, I leave that to Leslie. I can only say that, each of us has probably had experiences where we have a person and a task, and as much as we always want it to come together, it doesn't always happen. In this case, it has. Leslie, I think, is doing a great job with all this, as you witnessed tonight.
And I didn't pay him a dime, so thank you, Gary.
So did I understand correctly too that, and I realize it may be too early for you to say this conclusively, but that it might be your goal that as this gets rolled out to communities, it's the kind of thing that the state may be considering picking the tab up for the cost of such a system?
I don't know that, and I don't want to speak to that right now, but boy, that would be great. So we'll just have to see. We have to see. We have a very set number that's allocated for our budget. It's not as big as I'd like for it to be, but I don't think that it ever is. We're going to do the best that we can do and see how far that's going to take us. I'm hoping that we get some very competitive RFPs that will be very aggressive. What we're trying to do is let the ultimate bidders know that there is a potential for more work here. We are asking for these 2 with 3 beta test sites, but there is a potential. We have 39 cities and towns that all use a little bit of a different system. If we could normalize that, what a holy smokes moment from our customers' perspective. And then when we're doing business attraction from outside of the state, to say, here's what we have, and it doesn't matter whether you're in North Smithfield or North Kingstown, the process is going to be the same. Some of the biggest complaints that we get from people who are looking to come into the state, build businesses and grow businesses, is that every community they go to, it is just a little different, that it is not standardized, and they get very frustrated. We have no idea what that opportunity cost is that we've missed, but I bet it's substantial. We want to eliminate that. Again, our ultimate mission is to make it easier for businesses to do business in the state. The governor, the General Assembly have said it very loud and clear, and we're deploying that mission.
So if I understand, if you're hoping to go to beta test by the end of this year, early next year, I'm trying to think about it in terms of what are those things that this council is going to need to be giving some thought to in terms of either amending the MAP process, because that's going to be a regulation that needs to be changed. I'm just, the cost is one thing, and we can have that conversation. But I'm more curious to know, from a timing standpoint, what are those specific steps that you believe that we ought to be taking now to prepare for an early next year possible rollout where we can
I'm
tackle
just
those?
finishing integrating what Mr. Erickson sent me from your planning department. So you will have the most comprehensive map, other than probably Pawtucket is about right there with you in the state, of everything soup to nuts as you go through this entire process. I can only encourage you to look at that process and refine that as much as you can possibly do. Really take a look at your systems internally. Identify what hardware and software you have. All of those things put you ahead of the game. If we're talking about, if we're finding an early adopter, if you've done that identification process and you know that you have technology that can support a web-based system, do you have the speed of it? Do people understand how to use right now the technology they have? So that if we did training and added additionally on top of that, will they be able to then use that and deploy that? So really, I can, if I were to encourage you to do something, it would be a system analysis. What's our current state right now? What do we have internally? If we had to get something, what would we have to get in order to do that? Just to make sure that your systems are up and running as much as they can possibly be. But I think it's really on the mapping side. Is that as refined and as streamlined as it can possibly be? If you can do that, that will put you head and shoulders
But
above
I
a lot
hear
of
you
other
correctly
communities.
that your hope is to standardize the mapping process across several communities, so you may be coming to us with a recommendation to say, we understand what your map currently looks like. This is what we're suggesting that your mapping process look like in order to be, to conform to a process that we're going to be recommending be employed throughout the state.
So we're looking at some of that right now. We're looking for those best practice. We always want the best practice model. If we can identify that best practice model, and we see that a community can do it in 4 steps, and it may take another community 6, we will share that best practice with them and say, have you looked at this as an opportunity to maybe do it faster and better than you ever have before, without losing the oversight into the system. So we're doing that now. I'm starting to look at the emerging trends that we're seeing coming out of these maps. I'm looking at some of the standardized forms that they're using at the state level. Can we deploy that? I know that you all use the same building permit application that they do at the state level. Some communities don't. Some have changed some questions, some have added. We're looking for that standardized process. If we get to an electronic process like this, because there are multiple applications that you would fill out, we would hope to give someone a user ID that every time they go in, it's going to pre-populate all that stuff on the upfront for them. But change the bottom of that form so it's necessary, so it can go for a plumbing inspection or electrical inspection, a mechanical inspection. But it will be a standardized format up top with the information they need at the bottom, and so they can do it very expeditiously.
In an ideal world, this is operating from Woonsocket to Westfield when?
Oh. I know what my timeline is. I don't know what everybody else is. You know, to me, this is about a 5-year process. It really is. It's going to be a 5-year process from when we can initially deploy the system, test the system. It's one of those we're going to have to try and poke a lot of holes to make sure it's the right one for us. But I can see communities coming on as we go, and then the communities that already have other systems, a lot of them are on lease agreements. There's only one community that outright owns their technology. If we could interface with that at this point, I think that would be excellent.
Is that East Providence?
Actually, it's the city of Providence actually owns their technology. They actually had that system built. So they did an as-built. They've gone through a ton of customization in that process, and it seems to work well for them. They may ultimately, their software provider may ultimately be a bidder on this. I don't know that for certain.
Okay. Any further questions?
Any questions?
Interesting.
I
Okay.
will leave you a period 1 report just so you can see on the regulatory review side. It's great nighttime reading, but I'll leave those with you. And if you have any other questions, contact information is up there.
Possible that we could get the
I'll provide the slide deck
because
to
we'll get
you.
it up on the town website.
More than